Got that right. And let's head on over to Rumble and say hello and give acknowledgement to another great researcher, great worker, and great guy. Jason Barker. Real Jason Barker just donated a great contribution to the start of the program, $20 on this great summer drive, you might say, and says, I know Star Trek frowns on a monetary system. Yes, I ran into that for sure when I was in the offices and I proposed a story that had money in it. And I was told, no, can't have that. Gene Roddenberry doesn't want money. He says, but I am fresh out of dilithium crystals to barter with. Thank you, Jason. I love you, man. You are awesome. I can't wait to bring a big group on and just chat, man. It's going to be great. We'll have to do a special show. It'll be fun. I tell you, Knights of the Storm has just been such a great, great blessing every Saturday at 2:00 on Rumble. Just awesome. And of course, people can follow Jason as Real Jason Barker on X. Thank you, Jason, man. Thank you, man. All right. Well, let's get started, everybody. With a lot of heart, I want to come through for you on this story. And I know that some people in the audience don't agree with me on this, on the immigration issue. But, you know, there's no denying it. Just, for example, go to Grok and ask Grok, yes or no, does the word immigration appear in the Constitution? It will say, no, it does not. Just ask it yes or no. That's all I want is an answer, and you'll get that answer. And so very clearly, there are big ramifications for those people who call themselves patriotic, but are willing to have blinders on and continue to march down a path that leads to totalitarianism and towards greater breach of the Bill of Rights. And that's exactly what this police state thing has done. It also has torn apart the federalist concept, bringing agents into the states when, based on the Constitution, they can only go into states, and they can't even be immigration agents because there's no such power in the federal Constitution. It's left to the states. But policing agents of the federal government, supposedly the militia, cannot go into the states unless the state legislature or the governor, if the legislature is out of session, ask them to come in. So I want to turn to the news notes now with that as a framework for you. And again, I say this with no malice whatsoever. The malice tends to come back to me, and I'll push back as hard as you want, and I'm not going to lose the debate. You know I will win the debate on whether or not this is actually in the Constitution as a federal power. And you can't pretzel logic your way to it. It doesn't work. I've gone through this many times and had many debates on it, and I've never lost. You're going to lose the debate. That's just the way that it is. And you can't try to rationalize it somehow. And people are dying because of this. 50 people, you can look it up, between 50 and 52, there are different estimates, have died since January of 2025 in the hands of ICE or at the hands of ICE, in their custodial care or directly because ICE agents killed them. 50 people. How many people were in your high school class? That's a quarter of my high school class in a year dead because of the federal government, and they suck your money right out to do it. So the problem goes deeper than that, however, and it has to do, as Jacob Hornberger has mentioned, with freedom of association. And there's a very, very disturbing mindset that many Maga Republicans already had before Trump got back into office, which was that the aliens who are here have given up any right to life at different stages on a certain scale, a gradation scale, that they might be able to claim for themselves, or rights to be parents, or rights to work, or rights to be left the hell alone. They assume unto themselves, these MAGA people, the power to be able to say, no, I claim that they have breached some federal statute, which, of course, is only seen as constitutional because of the Chi Lung decision in 1875. They're not constitutional, but they assume, these MAGA folks assume that they are. Then they'll say, because these people breached something, they're already criminal aliens. They're breaking the law. Therefore, anything that happens to them is their fault. And that's how they justify and rationalize this type of utter criminality. If you had an invading nation state and they had been living in your nation, for 100 years. And the people who controlled it were all the descendants of others or had gained favor from the people who came before them. That would accrue no more legitimacy than this Supreme Court decision from people who usurped not just the wording of the Constitution, which doesn't include the word immigration, but the very concept of freedom of movement and the right to be left the heck alone. And this is the pernicious side of what the Maga people have embraced. They have embraced aggression and violence against people who never harmed anybody simply because they claim that they switched a switch to become illegals and came in illegally. Many of them didn't even do that. Many of them came in under the Biden administration as people who were here for temporary protective custody or temporary protective status. They came in from Haiti, from Guatemala, from that program that was started decades ago for people. And don't forget this, last week we mentioned Iranians who fled from Iran, the nation state that so many of the Maga people tell us is so evil. They've killed 50 million people in the past 2 days. Trump keeps ramping up the number of protesters they violently killed. It started at 4,500, then went to 38,000, then went to 40,000, and then Trump just said it was 50,000. So people who fled that evil Iran that they tell us is so evil that Trump has to unconstitutionally attack it and bomb school children, they fled that country. Don't forget, Friday we covered ICE is deporting them. That's how bad Iran is. Iran is so bad that the U.S. government that tells you they're bad is working to take your money to send the people who fled that bad country back to the bad country. If that makes any sense to you, you let me know. If anybody wants to go into the boxing ring of logic and get hit a few times by these fists, I think we're all in it. Let's do a tag team and let's come out swinging. I've got a long reach, like I said. I don't know about you guys, but fighting is not difficult. You use your head. You can't necessarily win, but at least you can put up a good fight on the intellectual front. So let's get into it. Let's discuss this. I want to show you down the page at the Liberty Conspiracy News Notes for this Bastille Day, red and black, as they would say in Les Mis. If we go down the page, let's talk a little bit about this immigration story. And as one goes through the editorial decisions about where to put a story, how long to devote attention to a story, there are many other stories that appear. And there are bright spots where you can play music that makes something more memorable, more fun, brings a breath of fresh air to the show. This is hopefully invigorating and nerve-wracking at the same time. Let me give you this information. For the second time in a week, ICE agents already not welcomed in Maine, per the governor's own statements, which of course ties to Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution. ICE agents have shot and killed an innocent person. Man killed by ICE in Maine days after Houston, Texas shooting, which we mentioned yesterday. This man, folks, had a work visa, but of course, on a deeper ethical level, no one should have to get permission from parasites in the tax-demanding polis to move around and peacefully associate with anyone. So get this. This guy had to get permission to work from tax-funded people who don't actually engage in real work to get their money. See if that makes any sense. And then armed goons funded with your sweat and toil stopped this man from going to where he was going to work. And then they killed him. He was on his way to work.
This morning, growing outrage after an ICE agent shot and killed someone who was not the target they were pursuing for the second time in less than a week, this time in Maine. A security camera at a nearby home capturing the sound of 5 gunshots. The man's white car, then seen here after the shooting, slowly moving in a circle. An agent trying to stop the vehicle, authorities eventually stopping it with their own car. First responders seen surrounding a man who lay motionless in the street. Daniel Boucher says he saw agents pull the driver out.
He put him on the ground, and I heard the young man say, "I tried to stop." Clearly heard him say that. I tried to stop, or I tried to pull over.
Boucher says one ICE agent claimed the man tried to run him over.
I could no longer see any movement, which meant that he had expired. He was bloodied. His face was bloody. It was awful. It was awful. I mean, really, really bad.
The car's windshield seen riddled with bullet holes.
I don't know what he did, but he didn't deserve to be executed in the street.
ABC affiliate WMTW identifying the victim of the shooting as Joan Sebastian Guerrero from Colombia. Immigration advocates say he had a social security number and was authorized to work in the U.S. and was on his way to work. Maine Senator Angus King saying the 26-year-old was not the intended target.
The question is, what did he do with his vehicle? Were officers threatened? Were the threats rising to the level that justified deadly force?
Now, I want to stop there. This is where everything goes off the rails. Angus King is completely off base there. Those aren't the friggin' questions, Angus. The questions are, does any single person have a right to point a gun at me to say, I want you to pay for a police force, a gang of thugs that will, like it's some sort of turf war, enter somebody else's state with pistols that will drill holes through glass and then into human flesh with their firings of lead. It doesn't matter whether you say it was justified. They weren't justified to be there. They weren't justified to threaten people. Who initiated the problem? And that's all you need to know. From that point on, you're just trying to rationalize and justify mobsters. Well, was this mobster? Did somebody push back against the mafia? Did somebody talk back? Did he try to flee? Maybe he was armed against the mafia. Well, then the mafia was certainly justified to kill him, to take away perhaps a father, a husband, a son. Perfectly justified, right, Angus? Is that the way it works? You got to think this stuff through, dude. You're not stupid. Why do people train themselves into accepting this terminology? This is completely unacceptable on any ethical human level throughout human history. Completely, completely unacceptable. There's no way anybody can argue that a gang of people can tell you to pay for them and then they can go maraud someplace. None of this starts in an origin of morality. Period. Done. There is no arguing against this. Zip. The guy wasn't hurting anybody. Those people, even if they were trying to stop a bad criminal, their money comes from criminality. The only way you can get an ethical police force is if it's done privately through real contract, and people who don't want to be part of it don't have to be part of it and pay into it. How much police forcing is enough police forcing? Where is sufficient police forcing be applied? I don't know, because it's all the collective and nobody can answer it. So we all argue about it. Isn't it wonderful? The collective is evil. That's all. The force collective is pure evil. It's people telling other people, you will do as we tell you. You don't start from that point, ever. That's why I'm an anarchist. No one can excuse the state, ever. It doesn't work. It doesn't start from a moral origin. Therefore, everything that springs out of it is immoral, unethical. It doesn't matter whether he's arguing whether these people thought they were justified or he thought they were friggin' justified. Their presence wasn't justified. Their existence as agents wasn't justified. Their salaries weren't justified. their armor, their guns. Nothing was justified. That guy's dead. It's so insane. It's friggin' crazy. Why in the world do people say dumb stuff like that?
King says he was told none of the agents involved were wearing body cameras. DHS says they are rolling them out to ICE agents across the country. A spokesperson for ICE telling ABC News, ICE law enforcement attempted to conduct a vehicle stop. The vehicle attempted to flee the scene, and fearing for public safety, an officer discharged his weapon. Monday's shooting coming 6 days after Lorenzo Salgado Araujo was shot and killed by ICE agents in Houston. Authorities there also alleging the victim threatened agents with his vehicle, though they did not provide evidence. At least 9 people have been killed during immigration enforcement operations under the second Trump administration. At least 5 of
That's at least 5 of them fatally shot. That is what prompted me to finally go into, because I've been saying it's about 45, go in to do some research and crack those numbers at lunchtime. It's more than that. It's 50 to 52 people, either directly killed or killed dead in the custody of ICE since January of last year. So what ABC is reporting there is good to know, but it is way, way under the real number. And maybe they're just going from the beginning of this year. I don't know. Now, the other thing that I want to mention here is that man in Texas, don't forget what we said about him yesterday. His family can't even get his belongings back. ICE doesn't even want to give it back. And yes, he was on his way to work. It's just insufferable. Absolutely crazy. That's what they do. Now imagine, as we move out of this, I'll get your comments. You feel free to let me know. But as a way to lay the stepping stone into the next story, imagine being caught in a world where ICE agents were anywhere and everywhere, walking down your street, doing anything they wanted, just like the lockdowns, not just shooting paintballs, but shooting people, stopping you from getting food, shutting off the water, shutting off the electricity, and then taking people's houses. Some of them jerry-rigging the houses to blow up. Some of them burning people's, let's say they've got apple trees. Well, that's the situation for the people who are Palestinians in Gaza, in southern Lebanon, in the West Bank, and partially in Jerusalem.